Hi, everybody. So today I'm going to talk to you about Mac infrastructure for iOS and Mac app DevOps. Every company in the world is becoming a software company. We heard that this morning. And a big part of that is because of this. This is the most powerful and widely distributed computing platform in human history to date. And it's what's driving software to go everywhere and anywhere as fast as possible. iOS and Mac were a big starter in that, and I'm guessing most companies have some sort of iOS and mobile strategy as part of their software platform. But I'm also guessing that they're struggling with DevOps in the traditional sense. So that brings us to MacStadium. That's who I'm with. We're here to help. My name's Chris Chapman. I'm the Senior VP of Software for MacStadium, and I'm basically in charge of software enabling everything so that our customers can get an experience on Mac like most people get in AWS and Azure. I'm going to give you a brief orientation on basically how iOS and DevOps work together right now, what we do today, and then kind of cover some cool stuff on the horizon that we think is really going to help. If you're an iOS developer or supporting them, bear with me for just a minute. So, if you use iOS or know people that do, you know Xcode. If you don't know, Xcode is what you have to use to compile and build Mac iOS and Mac OS applications. Everyone that does this has to use this tool. It only runs on Macintosh. So, macOS, Macintosh environment. And we put this icon up here because this is kind of how it feels these days for Mac developers, unfortunately. Somewhere in your build pipeline, you've got physical machines, and Apple's not making it easy. So they ask you to build different. When they say build different, unless you're a MacStadium customer, I bet you look like this, right? Everybody's got one hidden under their desk, squirreled away in a closet somewhere. That's so 90s, right? Physical servers, stuff that you have to maintain yourself. That's not the world we want to live in. To carry a theme forward from this morning, hashtag DevOps. How many of you have something like this sitting around? Big closet full of fun stuff. So you're playing Mac Jenga, you're making manual updates to OSs, you're not automating your build at this point, you're collecting build artifacts all over the place physically, and you got slow builds, long queues because some of the hardware is old, some of it's not updated, nothing's consistent. At the end of the day, it's not the modern world, and it's not what you're seeing at DevOps here. So that's what spawned MacStadium. We decided that wasn't right, and to have such a big ecosystem, Apple needed to get on par with everything. So we're an enterprise class solution for cloud using Mac. And the best option for companies that need Mac to run their business. I mean, if you're building global dominating applications, you don't want to put them on the stuff we just showed you. So what we do is we take that Mac consumer hardware that everybody has to deal with, because let's be honest, there is no enterprise Mac server that you can go buy and rack. There used to be, there is no more. So what you get to do is you get to deal with the consumer hardware. We take that hardware and turn it into a data center like this with enterprise class Mac infrastructure. And the way we do it is we take your typical Mac footprint, we beef it up. So we're adding fiber channel, we're adding redundant power, we're throwing it on a SAN with flash, we're putting it behind a firewall, we're giving you a proper cloud-based network. So now you've got everything you need to automate with virtualization. You can create single-use builds like you do in other environments. You've got secure infrastructure, simple maintenance, you can scale easily. It basically puts you back on par a little bit with the world you're used to. Not quite, but better than under your desk. And the reason this matters is because the iOS team, they need real infrastructure. I mean, right now, if you're not dealing with it directly, I bet if you go ask, it's a whole different world on that side of the fence. They want to do CI/CD. They want to treat infrastructure as code. You should be able to transform your iOS and Mac environments with Terraform and Ansible and Cloud and orchestrate them. And if you do, the cool part is you're going to move faster. The uncool part is if you're not running in an environment like this, you're going to have scaling issues because everybody's beholden to delivery times, physical setup, everything that comes with Apple. So what can we do and what can we do together to make this a better world? Well, one, we're going to try to help contribute to the ecosystem with a plugin to make it incredibly easy to start. And two, we're going to try to software enable this world a little bit more so that you can use the tools you're used to drive that kind of technology. So where do we start? Well, we start with a plugin that lets you use a cloud at MacStadium, like, again, you would use an AWS or a Google or an Amazon cloud. It's simple to set up. It knows about your cloud environment out of the box. It plugs back into your master, and it labels and tracks your slave nodes without you having to go do the manual steps to set all that stuff up. It keeps it consistent and simple across the board. So this plugin obviously is going to be open source. We're going to contribute it. It's built on Angular and Node, so we're hooking into the Blue Ocean interface. Driving that forward, that's what our dev teams use internally. So as much of that as we can get into the Angular and Node and React framework, we are. Obviously, there's limitations and Java connection points along the way. It's a top-level menu item, so we wanted to make sure it wasn't just a secondary build step tool. We want it to grow into something you can truly use to kind of monitor and manage your cloud. It lets you manage that capacity directly, and it integrates with your master or any master. So internally, my team's using it in a sort of self-contained Docker version of Jenkins. So spinning it up on MacStadium or spinning it up in your AWS cloud or connecting it to your local Jenkins environment is not a problem. So you might be thinking, what do you need to use this? Well, it's a plugin like any other. So you can download it, but you will need to have the Blue Ocean interface. Do you need MacStadium? So out of the box, version 1, yes. The whole goal for us was to make it simple to use MacStadium cloud-based capacity in your Jenkins environment without having to do a lot of setup. Now, can you contribute? Absolutely. We want that to grow because we feel like there's a deficiency in the iOS side of the world. And we'd love to see folks tell us what else they think we should do with this thing for Mac in general, not just MacStadium. Where do you get it? Well, it's going to be available like any other Jenkins plugin. So that kind of covers the plugin, and I want to go into the orchestration piece of MacStadium. So again, like we talked about before, if you're using Macs today, you probably are using them in a physical format, in a physical form, either as a development laptop or something in your closet. You maybe have used Fusion. You possibly have gotten bold enough to actually do something like VMware, but we're still not to orchestration level with Mac. It's a long way off, or at least it's supposed to be. You use Kubernetes everywhere else. Your dev teams have pipelines. They get ephemeral containers. They spin up what they need, and we want you to do the same thing. So, like I said, there's several virtualization options, and you can do things with VMware like linked clones and instant clones, things like that get you container-like functionality. But we had an idea. So a couple of years ago, I started thinking, and I don't know if you guys have ever seen a turducken before, but we kind of had an idea that pretty much reminiscent of a turducken. We were thinking, well, we've got these Macs. So if I can put a container on a Mac, what if I can put a Mac in a container? So that kind of led us down this crazy little path I'm about to take you on. We started, like anybody else, going, okay, let's see if we can get Docker working. We slathered it with Linux. Any flavor will do. Then we layered on Docker. Now we can orchestrate Docker on Mac. which you can do today. The interesting things, as a side note, about running your builds on Mac is it's the one hardware platform that you can legally and compliance-wise run any OS on without any issue. So we knew we could throw Docker on it. Then came the turducken step. So stuffing Mac OS back into a container, which I know you're all saying that's kind of not the whole point of Docker, you idiot, but we did it anyway. The real point for us was, A, to make sure we could put an OS in a container and then lighten it up from there, and B, to link it to the tools that everybody likes to use. Because the key for this is I can make it lightweight, but more critically, I can interface it to all the open tools that we have for Docker, all the open tools that we have for Kubernetes, and I can make it much, much more effective for you, the developer, to work with that environment, as opposed to having to deal with more of the operational side of the house. So this gets you a standard and consistent command line interface now. You can use your Kubernetes interface to orchestrate macOS containers. Now they're full macOS for your build, but you can issue any command you want. You get all the orchestration benefits that you would normally get. We actually increase container security. So this is an odd piece of this little turducken journey I was telling you about. Because in doing this, we've sort of had to virtualize the container and wrap virtualization around the container itself. And in doing so, what you've actually got is not only Docker-based security, but virtualization-based security around that. So in essence, you've got multiple layers. And additionally, this complies with Apple's rules. So the big deal with Apple is Apple OS on Apple hardware. This is Apple OS. This is on Apple hardware. So you're still compliant, but you've got all the flexibility. So you might be thinking, is this really a container? Well, yes and no, right? It's in a container. It's a Dockerized version of Mac. Now, it's a little different than your traditional Docker layer in that it's not a lightweight OS necessarily. Lighter, but not lightest. We haven't built a Mac OS underneath it. Do you have to learn an API? No. So the whole point for me as a software developer is being able to link into my IDE, get my tools that I already have to monitor and manage and scale my environment to work the same way. I don't want to learn another API. I don't want to have to know another set of tools. And do Kubernetes tools work? Absolutely. That's the whole point. Again, I want it to interface to the common standard. And can it be extended? Sure. Again, Docker and Kubernetes out of the box. So any scripting, any tooling, anything you have around that world works in this world too. So timing. Plugin, we're pushing that in October. You should be able to download it. And like I said, I'd love for folks to contribute, kick it, tell me it's great, tell me it stinks, let's fix it, let's make it awesome. And then the orchestration environment, we're starting beta pilot testing with some of our customers now, and we're targeting 2019 for a full release for everybody. So what's next? If you guys want to use MacStadium, and I highly recommend if you have an iOS team that you give it a shot. I think it's light years ahead of probably what they're having to deal with today. You can start it with a free trial at MacStadium.com. If you have more questions, I'd love to talk to you not just about what we do, but how you build on Mac, how you can improve performance on Mac. As you can imagine, when we uplift all these environments, tips and tricks come out of the woodwork, and we've learned a whole lot about how to make things more efficient, increase your build times, what you can do to your pipeline to make it faster, quicker, see where the gaps are. So come find me at our booth. If you'd like to get involved, I am definitely looking for folks to, like I said, tell me what features matter to you. We're interested in building an environment that's useful to the development community and the DevOps community. So devs at MacStadium.com will get you involved, and you can follow us on Twitter at MacStadium.com or at MacStadium. That's what I've got. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.